What's up, team? Welcome to the world of Eve Pacific. I'm your accountability buddy, Nono Woods. This is our first interview in a series of interviews that will be taking place regarding fitness. So I will be interviewing marathoners, rock climbers, walkers, surfers, anybody that does anything to stay in shape and keep the body in motion. So I had to have someone very special in this first segment. He is a scientist, a recruiter, but a marathoner. He's been running since he was knee-high to a butterfly. And he's a friend of mine. Nathan Radosevich will be joining me here today.
Soundstripe.
And we are here with Nathan. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Good to see you.
No, it is good to be seen. No, thank you so much for doing this. You are one of the few people that have always supported me in any endeavor, and I've always wanted to be there for you. And so this is a way for me to get to share this with the world, our relationship and how unique it is, because it is a shining example of unconditional love of just people, man. And I really want to get this out into the world. So thank you very much. I am humbled.
My pleasure.
This is gonna be super duper fun. I'm gonna give a little background on how we met. We're both from Chicago. I wore this in the background just for you. I see you posted on Facebook yesterday. It was opening day.
Absolutely.
And anytime that I introduce anybody to Chicago climate, I always say, it can be snowing at Wrigley or, Comiskey on opening day. So just be cognizant when you're planning your trips to Chicago, right?
Good point.
So Nathan and I met at, what is that, Club 708, where
710, yeah.
710, yeah, in PB. That's the Bears, Ohio State or Oklahoma, I think. It's Ohio State. I know
Yeah.
it's, yeah. So we became fast friends, and now Nathan and we get together periodically. Well, I would say BP before pandemic. We used to meet once a month, lunch.
Yeah, we had a good rhythm. We had a good cadence going. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's when I was still over in Sorrento Valley and in that area. I just want to dive on into this. So most people don't know yet, this is my first interview here for Eve Pacific Health, and we love to live this way. That is our tribe. We love to live this way tribe, health, fitness. We cover everything under the sun, from beginners to ultra marathoners. And walking is basic, but when people start thinking of fitness, the first thing they think about is running. And so when I thought about interviews, the first person I thought about is you. I call you the scientist, the running scientist. Why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, your family, your background, and then we'll go into your love.
That sounds good. Well, yes, as you alluded to, I was born and raised about an hour and a half south of Chicago, and grew up in the Midwest, where everything is relatively flat. And I think to keep us active and busy and kind of collectively out of his hair, my dad introduced us to fitness at a pretty early age, and he actually started us with just simple walks up and down a couple of the local neighborhoods and streets and foothills. Back then we were we were kids who had to be bribed with frozen yogurt at the end. But it launched us into a little bit of the fitness running realm. And, I was fortunate enough to go to a grade school that had a track and field club. And then as I grew up into, high school and university level, that's when running and fitness really took off. I was part of varsity crews in high school for my freshman year, and I would say that almost the entirety of my high school life kind of centered around running and cross country track, and even so far as to working at a running specialty store, one of these local boutique shops. And I had a chance to run for Adidas for a summer. I was sponsored for a summer by Adidas, and helped organize a lot of local races that we have, and made my way through the circuit there. And the same with college. I went to University of Illinois and walked on my freshman year for the cross country team, but quickly realized that the dream of becoming a scientist wasn't necessarily as compatible as I wanted it to be with cross country. And those guys they were pretty heavy into it. So I went the scientific route and kind of just ran for recreation. And then I moved out here to San Diego for graduate school.
Health and fitness capital of the world. Right?
Yeah, as it turns out, there's lots to do that is not indoors, contrary to the Midwest. Nice year round, and so it was conducive to running year round. So, and that was the point at which I kind of realized that I wanted to, as I was maturating into a scientist, I also wanted to maturate my distance running acumen. And my parents always served as really good examples of that because they had run the Chicago Marathon every single year. We got so used to them training on weekends and seeing them gone for large swaths of time as they did their long runs. So they set a very good example for what diligence and for what dedication looked like. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a lot of coaches who did the same, and just kind of by virtue of that fact, I got it in my, that harebrained notion that all marathoners do to work on running the 26.2 mile distance. And like every single person who goes through that for the first time, I had no clue what I was doing, and I was young and impressionable and full of purpose. And
Wait, back up. So in high school, I seen cross country runners, like I used to take the bus to school and they were just like running these routes. So I always thought that 26 point whatever, 0.2 was a part of being in cross country and long distance running. So I'm wrong?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a misconception. So the common distance for high school and even collegiate runners is no more than 3 miles, and that was the racing distance. You do those 3 miles very quickly, but it's a race that lasts in between 15 to 20 minutes if you're good, and then it's done. So that's a fraction of the distance that marathoners take on. And now we were training at longer distances. We would run up to 10 miles and that was a long run for us in high school or in college, but that's not even half the distance for a full marathon. And that will be a baseline even if you're a half marathoner who's really competitive and goal oriented.
Great. So all right, in the Marine Corps, to run a first class physical fitness test is 18-minute 3 miles. So when you're training at the collegiate level and high school level, 15 minutes 3 miles, that's about the average. So that makes sense. So on the longer runs, 10, but not quite the 13.1, right?
Yeah. So I always consider, if I'm going to be doing any sort of distance training, dedicated distance training, my baseline in my head is to get a good healthy 10-mile base underneath me that I can consistently run and repeat. Yeah.
Okay. So your focus of being a scientist married when you got out here to San Diego. So now we're up to the point where I wanted to ask about, when was your first marathon?
Yeah. So, you know, there were two that I had on slate for 2005. And the first one that I did was, back then it was just simply referred to as the San Diego Marathon, but it happened to be taking place in Carlsbad in North County,
Oh,
San Diego. Um, and I wanted to do that one as a test run because I knew that 5 months after that, my parents were going to be coming out to run the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon with me. You know, and that's part of what drove it, is that they were turning 50 years old that year. And here I was as a young upstart 25-year-old and thinking like, I'm going to have to be able to knock this out with them. So Carlsbad was the first one I ran, which was, you know, it was a hard-nosed indoctrination because there were long stretches where there was nobody around, and
oh
my
wow.
training was pretty improper, and so you didn't have crowd support, and I you know, really didn't know what to expect or anticipate, and so I had a little bit of a rough entry into the marathon universe the first time around, but
That is hilarious. Carlsbad, what I'm always thinking about, let me think, up near Palomar Airport Road and those long stretches, is that part of that route up there?
yeah, I think initially the race organizers really wanted to get a lot of time on the coast and running parallel to the beach. And so you had a vast swath of the later mileage that would run up the coastline. And so you did have some nice beach, ocean air that was coming in. But you know, a lot of it was, you know, where the crowds and the cheering and the support sections, you know, didn't really supplant themselves. And so I would look up and around in the later miles where you really needed the support and find nobody around. And it was just kind of like the the seagulls every now and again. You're wondering, am I in the right
Just
place?
keep running.
Yeah, it was yeah, a little bit of a tough stretch there,
Oh
but
my God. And that was your first marathon. Your parents were on their way out to run another one with you in a couple of months. How
yeah.
did you do in that first marathon? What was your time like? Did you
I
finish?
Yeah, it was, you know, that was the goal after hitting what they always refer to as the wall. You know, you simply want to be done at that point. But I finished in 3 hours and 40 minutes
Wow.
as a 25-year-old. And I didn't really know what to expect. I knew that, you know, a lot of my coaches were you know, running at paces that qualified them for the Olympic trials. So I had kind of the sub 3 hour mark in my head, but quickly realized that wasn't realistic the way that I had trained for it. And I also knew that my parents were running around that, you know, at least my father would race marathons at around that same pace mark. So I at least knew that I could kind of keep up with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so it's awesome that your parents were the example, but I hear that humanistic competition between the father, the son, or wanting to impress the father, him being the benchmark, like this is what this is what I'm striving to do. So, well, how much time was it until the next marathon when the family came out for their 50th?
So it was the rock and roll back then was held in June. So I had from, you know, about 5 months to rest, recover, and then restart all over again with renewed purpose and kind of with a renewed training plan in mind. Given how I did, you know, with Carlsbad, and they came out and yeah, they ran rock and roll with me, and that was also a very humbling experience. You know, it was much more grandiose, obviously put on by a bigger organization, and you had bands everywhere, and the course is very new and exciting, and there's crowds all over the place. And my interesting anecdote was that I finished that one in 3 hours and 35 minutes.
Oh, wow.
But I was actually racing as part of Team Reebok. I had actually just entered and won a contest inadvertently for local San Diego runners. There were 5
Oh,
of us.
good.
So we got all the Reebok swag and we're treated like VIPs. And that was really a cool experience to have. So I was riding high when I crossed the finish line, thinking, man, I bested my time by 5 minutes. And this is great. And
That's
I
a lot.
distinctly remember turning right around after I had crossed, and here comes my father. Right behind me. He was on my heels the whole time. I didn't even know it. Didn't even think to pay attention to it.
Was following you to make sure if anything happened, he was there to help you out.
Wow. Or if he beat me, I was never going to live that down. So
Right.
I'm glad that I'm glad that I edged
Yeah.
it out a little bit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But I got again, I got schooled on just how much he knew and I didn't when it came to extreme long distance racing.
So now this is interesting to me. Now you mentioned like coaches and things of that nature. During that time when you were preparing in 2005, did you hire coaches? Did you join a running club, or were you just on winging it?
It was,
Trying to
at
learn
that
from
point, I
people?
was still too new to San Diego to really understand the inner workings of joining a running club or a track club out here. And I think that I was just busy enough with grad school that I didn't really think to, tag team or partner up with anybody. I'm still kind of, just doing this as a post laboratory kind of a de-stressing and decompressing kind of exercise. It was a nice way for me
Train for a
to get out there.
marathon. That's how you break the stress.
Yes. So I didn't, I didn't have any coaching, but I would, I think that having parents who knew what they were doing, I always had resources and they were always able to answer any questions that I had. And then I had always kept in touch and had a really good sort of a brotherly relationship with my high school coach, who I still keep in touch with to this day.
Oh, wow.
And I had made a lot of very tight knit running friends in the running community back in the Midwest. And so I
Oh,
always had shoulders that I could tap on, who were offering training plans and benchmarks for success and kind of giving me these ideations that, here are the best ways to go about week over week training. And
okay.
here's a loose diet plan that you should be following. And here's kind of what strength training you should be complementing with and so forth. So piecemealed it together and kind of cobbled it into one little knowledge sphere that I used when I was training overall.
So that brings me to your favorite running shoe. You mentioned Adidas a couple of times, but I mean,
Yeah.
Asics is
No,
my favorite.
this is a very interesting, actually, up until about 5 years ago, if you would have asked me that question, it would have been one answer. And then from 5 years up until the present day, it's another. I used to always run an Asics.
Right?
They were thought of as, like the runner shoe, and they
the-
made shoes for runners and nothing else. And they really had this, this really effective cushioning system, and it was just the most comfortable thing that I've ever put on my feet. And they continued to advance their technology pretty well. And I don't know what on earth made me switch over to Nike or have the idea that I was going to do so.
Oh,
But
wow.
I think that it was a conversation with my coach, who I had always seen as a really, a very one distinct type of stability runner. And when I saw that he had Nikes on his feet and he was describing them and almost pitching them to me in a salesy way, saying that, yes, even though I have a very, stride and a footprint that's prone to overpronation, that I could theoretically get away with a more neutral shoe like Nike. And so he kind of was the catalyst to get me out of my comfort zone and start trying out Nike. So I went towards the Air Pegasus route, and I fell in love instantaneously with the lighter weight of it, and just the freedom of, it shaved several seconds per mile off of my time just having a lighter weight shoe, and I haven't looked back. And now it's all Nike.
just do it. Nike is now it for you. I mean, when you go to look for running shoes, do you go to Road Runner?
I don't. No, not anymore. Um, I will always now be a big proponent of local boutique kind of
Oh wow.
startup running stores, and there are several that are around San Diego that you can go visit and patronize. But I think that Roadrunner has gotten pretty big, commercialized, and whenever I go in there now, it's not necessarily populated with runners, so
No.
much as it is salespeople who don't run, and so I don't really like to get advice proffered to me that it hasn't been tested on the roads per se, and anymore these days I've kind of
I
gotten to the
work
point where I know
on
what I'm
Shoe
looking.
Dog though. I know everything I need to know. It comes out this computer at Shoe Dog.
Yeah, I guess call me old fashioned, but I think that I will go by touch and feel, and rather than a computerized
Oh my
AI
gosh.
simulation. Let me strap on, lace up, and head out on the pavement for a few steps, and I'll instinctively know whether something's going to work. But with all of the having worked in running shoes, and even knowing the polymeric chemistry behind what midsole composition is, and knowing the different types and how these things are made, and kind of doing the molecular research on the materials that go into this,
Did
I
we
got a pretty
mention
good.
you are a molecular biologist? Did we? What?
I don't think that we got that detailed, but
Oh,
yeah, so I've always had, being a scientist by trade is maybe naturally curious, but we got to be pretty specialized when it came to shoe education when I was working in that running specialty shoe, because we did want to offer that level of expertise and service to runners who were serious about it.
oh
You had
wow.
just getting started, or who were training for the latest and greatest, and you wanted to be able to offer them a customized solution that made sense, whether they were 100 pounds with rocks in their pockets soaking wet, or whether they were 300 pounds and wanting to get off the ground and start. You had to be able to offer the right footwear.
Wow.
So we knew kind of, and that was the heyday, where then the late 90s was when the running shoe scene just kind of exploded, and there
Right.
became more than just 5 or 6 options. It was just this host of different selections that you could try out from a lot of different makes and models. So yeah, that's the kind of mantra that I take now, and as long as I'm keeping up with the progression of the technology that comes out, I kind of pretty good idea. Nike's Zoom technology is now, I know the keywords and the buzz phrases to look for when I pick out a new shoe, and that'll be an indicator of whether or not it's going to work for me. And you have to fundamentally know the difference between what a racing flat is and what a training shoe is, and
Right.
and a lot of the wear and tear differences that are going to go into that. So
So how often do you have to buy shoes? And when you purchase them, I'm 53 years old when I first learned this. You're going to purchase a training shoe and a racing shoe. Do you have to break that racing shoe in? I mean, how does this go? How does the purchasing
yeah,
cycle go?
I buy shoes way more often. I'm not the best person to ask. I spend way too much, and I spend too often on running shoes. But it's a passion. I guess it's a passion or obsession. I don't know what the right phrase is, but yeah, and I end up going on the higher end of the shoes that I buy. Traditionally, I find that if I get the right shoe and it feels good the first time on, it's not necessarily a situation where I have to break it in.
Oh,
And the
wow. So
same
you
holds
can,
true for racers. Yeah, you shouldn't have to break in shoes, really.
okay, so you
Um,
could buy a shoe on Monday and just put it back on Saturday and run the rock
yeah,
and roll.
absolutely. And
Oh,
matter of fact,
wow.
that was for a while there when I was guessing and testing. What I would do is go and find the shoe that I wanted, and kind of ensure that the fit was right, and then I would just go in and order it online. Whether it's
Wow.
Amazon or somewhere else. And that's consistently now what I do through the Nike app, is that I'll just have a rolling order of shoes that would come in And usually I can last, anywhere from 3 to 5 months with one pair.
Holy cow. I go 3 to 5 years with you. No. Let me ask you this. Now, are you like continuously training for the next marathon? How many marathons would you run in a year, say now? Are you
Oh
training for
man.
something now?
Yeah. Well, so my pre-pandemic, I was going through 2 to 3 half marathons per year, per season, whatever I could get my hands into, that's just and that's the reason for the 10-mile base, is that it's nice to be able to kind of call through the online trades and then realize that there's an up and coming half marathon, and you don't necessarily need to ramp up or do a
You're
heavy a
there.
lot. Yeah, you're there already, and you can just kind of register and insert yourself into those races. So I have one next week. For instance, I'm going to be doing the La Jolla half marathon.
Oh, wow.
And pre-pandemic, that was the cadence with which I was racing, pretty consistently. And then COVID hit right when I was supposed to fly to Virginia Beach to meet some of my old training pals and do the Shamrock half marathon out there at Virginia Beach. But those plans got put on hold, and so did a lot of the half training. So I ended up dialing it back, and without that, without races like that in sight, you think to yourself, well, I'm gonna, reduce this down to maybe 5K training, 10K mileage. And at my age, I've realized that, hey, it's better to preserve your knees whenever possible and to do some low impact stuff, but keep up your cardio respiratory capabilities. Yeah.
Now, see, that is what I wanted to segue into. Now, your mother is in the orthopedics, right?
Yeah.
When I hurt my back, you had gave me some great advice. Now, have you ever been hurt
I have
from running?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what kind of injury is it? And what kind of precautions do you take now because of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I distinctly remember, I was a sophomore in college, and this was when I was still very heavily involved in a lot of road running and road training. But on Christmas morning, I got out of bed and stepped down onto the ground, and lightning bolts shot up my leg. And I just kind of crumpled to the ground, and in some of the worst pain I've ever felt. The injury that resulted was started out as a stress fracture on the head of my femur. I didn't feel it all the time. I came to find out, and this is a bad thing, that I have a higher tolerance for pain. So normally you're able to feel stress fractures, no problem.
Right.
And that's your signal to stop what you're doing and allow your bone to recover. But this was a piece of bone on the head of my femur that essentially turned into a section that could have essentially fallen all the way off. And
Wow.
and so that's what I felt. And so they refer to it medically as an osteochondritis dissecans lesion, or an OCD lesion.
Oh,
But yeah, OCD, which
yeah, right.
that's a
How
whole other
fitting.
track. Yeah.
Yeah.
But had that piece of bone fallen off, it would have been extraordinarily risky to just even the ability to walk again.
Really?
So yeah. I was told this after the fact, right? I think my physicians didn't want to scare me, but
Right.
but essentially what they had to do, and it was a very simple arthroscopy procedure where they went in and just drilled screws back into to affix that piece of bone to the head of my femur again, and it reossified in its completeness, and then they took the screws out. And,
Okay.
so it was probably a good 9-month road to recovery back when I was a sophomore in college, back when I was 19, 20 years old, and thankfully it happened then.
When your body's still
but-
growing.
yeah, exactly. And you're still, you're able to recover quicker than you are when you're now like 40,
Nice.
45. But it did.
I like how you say 40.
Yeah, we'll cover that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mics don't catch it. But it did make me think differently around training and around mindful preparation, things like maintaining healthy weight and ensuring that there's a lot of safety measures that are taken into account. You're just ever mindful now about what could happen and how devastating injuries can be if you are in the middle of a lot of training and heavy duty.
Trust me, at the peak of my strength training, and I didn't learn it until actually I hurt myself, is that this guy was, 15 years my junior, and he was in much better shape than me. And he's, he was really patient, working with me, showing me how to build strength, getting my PRs up, back in the 300 club. But the thing was, once after I got hurt, I understood that I had to be at the gym a half an hour before him to warm my body up to start throwing those weights around, right?
Big time.
So I understand what you're saying with preparatory and precautionary. Definitely as you get older. And you had mentioned about the knees. And this is something, I don't want to have a misconception floating out there in the world. When you're a runner, it's high impact, right? And those people that are older, they talk about tolerance for pain. There is a certain, I guess with the territory it comes with, right? If you're a runner and you get older, you're going to start having joint issues, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's general wear and tear. The cartilage begins to break down. The ligaments and tendons tend to loosen a little bit more. Reossification happens at a slower pace, and just things start to happen.
Okay.
You can, there are supplements and there are dietary modifications that I think you can make too that really do go a long way to staving that off. And there's a lot of preventative work that you can go, and do to ensure that you're as protected as possible.
So when you talk about supplements, right? I live on lots of supplements these days because my body doesn't process minerals and vitamins like 10 to 20 years ago. So what supplements or supplementation regimen are you on right now at years old?
I think that probably one of the biggest things that I have learned is to, maintain good digestive health.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It
Gut
helps.
health.
I think,
That
yeah,
is the first thing off the bat.
that's exactly it. I think that has a more dramatic impact than anybody realizes. And, and that harkens back to my days as a scientist when, a lot of the professors that I was working alongside were doing a lot of intensive research on the impact of the gut microbiota and gut health overall on just general health and well-being. And as a result of keeping the creatures in our stomachs happy, a lot of other good things can disseminate from that. So I ensure that I take a lot of fiber, a lot of probiotics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And very closely monitor that.
Calcium?
I take a multi. I take a
Okay.
lot of multivitamins, that are all kind of all inclusive on the spectra of getting all major vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. Any more than that, I find that it's just your body can't process it as quickly, and so it ends up just expunging,
Just flowing out, right?
Yeah. But coming from an orthopedic centered mom, I realized the value of glucosamine and chondroitin on knee and joint health, and it does preserve your the ability to kind of keep that the body's cushion, so that you don't have bone on bone grinding, and there's still some level of gelatinous lubrication that is afforded in the space between.
Yeah, the space between. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, was that Is that coming from up North California? What is that? What's that song, The Space Between? Anyway, it's funny that you mentioned that. Now I have to plug. E-Pacific Health is my blog. I've done, many articles, and one of them was on glucosamine and chondroitin, and we got a real short video here on the channel about it. I thought it was very interesting, the scientist, mentioning something that I was told very early on in the Marine Corps with some fitness nuts that weren't into bro science. They were just like, that's why you're having all this, you're taking these vitamins and then they're just flowing through you. I mean, you really don't need these Vita packs and certain things. You get you a multi and go into it, right? So
That's pretty much
that's it. There are a lot of misconceptions, and I don't want to knock anybody in the industry. Supplements are there for a reason, right? But know your body and your physiology and what you need to be taking, because it's not all a one size fit all.
right. Yeah, I think that's a really
Prescription, right?
really critical component to this is listening to your body, and that's an overused phrase, I think, but
it is, but it's true though, right?
it is, yeah, 100%, and you have to pay attention. And when I was young and stubborn, I didn't, I went against every piece of advice that my body gave me. But now, I'm finding that okay, if I am kind of inclined to back off, or I can tell now when I'm dehydrated, for instance, or when I'm a quart low, and I need to the other thing that I've gotten used to doing now is supplementing water with Pedialyte action packets, or replacing electrolytes at a greater rate of speed. A lot of that comes into just how you feel and how you perform. I've noticed differences on that front as well.
So now you're talking about performance, and I know at one time or another you have mentioned about running shorter races and investing your times. Is that still your goal? And is that what you're doing all the time? Even though the calendar keeps turning, the clock keeps ticking, are you trying to get faster?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that, being around it this long, I think that's constantly, I'm constantly looking for that PR, and you get little hints, and, it's almost like when you're golfing recreationally and you hit, 17 holes worth of bad shots, but then there's one hole that you have a superb drive and, you birdie out, and it gives you hope to go back and do it again. And there are great runs and there are bad runs and everything in between on the spectrum. And the same with races too. But, there are these immortalized, nowadays everything gets recorded on our watches, our smartwatches.
That's right.
And we can go and we can look back at our times at any point, and, and they get kind of cemented there in the in the universe for you to go back and make reference to. And yes, I've noticed a little bit of slowing, but still there are benchmarks and milestones that I can hit. So I'm always chasing the next PR or the next time that I can go sub 7, or and for now now that I know that I'm capable of running a 90-minute half marathon, and guess what I'm going to be doing for the foreseeable duration is to chase the sub 90 threshold each and every time I go out there and do it, regardless of the course. So
that's that competitive spirit. And I'm glad you brought up the wearables. That was the first blog that I did, was the importance of monitoring your heart rate during training. Could you expound upon that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I didn't really pay a lot of attention to early on as well. But I think that wearable technology has really made us kind of awaken to these zones that we can be in for peak performance I think it's not necessarily as important for racing so much as it is for training,
Training.
conditioning.
Mhm.
And I think that if we were to get more granular, it's a terrific way to closely monitor if you want weight loss, for instance, or more to the point, fat loss. When you
Fat
look at
loss.
the body biochemistry and the physiology, specific heart rate zones directly correlate to the ability to burn fat and not muscle. So you
Raising that metabolic rate to the right
yeah,
humming minute. Yeah,
yep.
get your engine humming in the right zone, right?
Exactly. And even now, I look at this as a test and a testament to my overall fitness. And, there are, and you can Google, anybody can Google, heart rate zones by age and look at what the zones are calibrated at for for any given finite age group. And so I look at that as a way of saying, all right, I have retained a lot of cardiovascular fitness because I can still maintain exercise rates at this heart
Wow.
rate at my age. And so I'll use that still in a society that does, that is earmarked by a lot of cardiovascular disease as now the second killer. And it does have a dramatic impact on, life expectancy and just overall quality of life. It's nice to be able to kind of put your finger on those types of charts and reference the heart rate monitors that we have on our wrists now and say, I'm doing okay. We could
Good.
keep doing this for a little while.
Yeah, especially for those of us that suffer from anxiety, that's one less pill I have to take.
Definitely. Yeah. The fewer, the better.
Oh my gosh. As we're winding down the road, I want to know, what is your favorite race course
Oh, wow.
and why? And why?
Yeah. I think that there's a special place in my heart for the Craft Classic 5K. Part of that is I have run that race since its inception, which was several years ago. But it's a race that starts and ends in Sereno Valley.
Oh, you told me about that.
It's great. And I think that
Oh,
I have
yeah.
consistently outperformed, in that field because there's I think that there's about 800 feet of elevation change, up and down twice,
Yeah.
which is rare for a 5K race. You don't often see that in such a
Sponsored
short.
by Green Flash. What?
It is. It's Green Flash. Green
That's
Flash in
my old
conjunction.
stomping grounds. I remember you mentioning that for the first time. You were trying to drag me.
I'm still going to. I'm still going to keep
Yeah,
recruiting.
5K, I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do
It's
that.
but it is it's a great little out and back. It's very challenging and and I've seen a lot of egos get crushed on that course. People who fly out of the gates, gangbusters, and then realize the mistake that they've made. And so it's, even though it's a 5K and it's a short distance, it is very strategic and it's very much mental. And I'm still surprised year over year at how much it can mess with my head, even at the tail
Really?
end of the race, even though I know every step, every footprint of what's coming. It still provides its challenges. But yeah, I consistently, and that's a race that has been run in different seasons. And so I've experienced different fields. I've experienced the summertime race where I'm up against some of these younger collegiate kids and the fast high school kids that I used to be.
Right.
And I can still do okay. And I've experienced it in the fall and, and some of the earlier season months. They varied the times that it's been held. And each and every time I have a blast. I think it's supremely well organized and it's well thought out. It's a lot of fun.
That is hilarious. That is awesome. Your love affair, your favorites, your journey consistently, keeping healthy. Why don't you tell us what are some of the things that you're doing in conjunction with your training? How are you trying to help others these days?
Yeah, I think that that's a huge part of accountability. And so, a lot of what I do these days is low impact cardio, as well as a lot of supplementary strength training. As I age, I realize how important that is. So there are consistent coaching proffers that I have and advice that I give him. So I have a couple of people that some mutual friends that we have who have kind of, by virtue of seeing me at the gym or seeing me on the roads around town, around the neighborhoods, they've just asked. And we, as a result, have found a common interest and mutual love of running or overall general fitness and well-being. And so I think that I have no less than, at any given time, 5 different text message threads
Wow.
offering different coaching advice. And so a lot of it does center around running, road racing. And it could be something as simple as people sending in their times to me and the distances that they've run from, screenshots they have on their, smartwatch or phone. And we'll be able to troubleshoot if they're running into a wall, or if they're hitting a plateau, or if they have a race coming up and need some advice on nutrition or race prep. And I've also started to film my own strength training videos.
Have you really?
Coming up with some different exercises that will boost overall functional strength. I think is a huge part of this.
That's key.
And I'm coming to believe the more halves that I do run, that the arms are the second pair of legs.
That's it. You're carrying you through, right? You taught me that, right?
The first 10 miles is run with your legs, and the last 3 are run with your arms. And so, it's one of those where I've definitely supplemented and tried to pass that knowledge along. I'm such a nerd. I have huge Excel charts that detail week over week, day by day, fitness and training plans. And then I've even cut and pasted strength training diagrams and put in details about exercises. So I'll pass those along to anybody who asks, or who wants, or who has any interest in both taking it seriously and taking their you've done the same for me.
No, but see, I'm the accountability buddy. I'm Noble Woods, your accountability buddy. And here at E Pacific, we believe we can do anything together, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you share with me, I share with you. Oh my gosh, Nathan. So to wrap it up, I have to keep it fun. We've gone through our 20 questions, except for you've been through a lot of these different races and lengths for reasons. Have you ever, what do you wear when you're running?
Yeah.
That light sweat evaporating cloth stuff. What are you wearing?
Nothing but, yeah. So it's all, speaking of Nike, I'll seek out their dry fit technology. And it's interwoven. It's kind of mesh interwoven, and nowadays they have all of these fancy terminologies like cool zone fits and all of that tech. But I do like the tailor-made running shorts with compression sleeving on them, and I'll even wear compression tubes on my calves.
Really?
As well, yeah. I do like those. If nothing else, it does kind of keep the sweat out of my socks. But in the later miles is when I do notice that they offer a little bit of lower leg stability, and it reduces a lot of post-race swelling as well.
That's what I was going to say. So post-race swelling, keeping the sweat out of your socks, avoiding blisters, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's such a big part of it. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
and I
that's
will,
the first thing came to mind, like blisters. Yeah,
big time. Yeah.
So it's a segue into, have you ever ran a race in a costume? And what are these races? What are they called? These things where I see people with the rainbow, spray paint or whatever it is, and then they're doing these races.
There's a lot of them out there now, and I think that you'll even see on any given race there will be a handful of people in. It's somewhere along the line when 5K running got to be in vogue. You saw a lot of the female population wearing tutus, for instance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be somebody in a full costume that's kind of doing it for, laughs. And I see that pretty consistently. There's always going to be like just a small percentage.
So these are special races. These are just regular 5Ks.
They can be, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
and then there are races that do have a costume contest affiliated with them. Best costume wins a gift certificate, for instance. And I've never, maybe it's a testament to like how stick in the mud-ish I am about it. I've never run in a costume, but I have run in the opposite of a costume.
You ran nude?
I did.
Where?
Back in high school, there was a tradition that was started by some of the upperclassmen that I got into as a result of being on the varsity squad. And
you were getting hazed.
Totally. Yeah, that's looking back on it, that's exactly what it was. But it was just a bunch of us being high school deviants. But in essence, we would, at the night after the state cross country meet, which was held, by the way, in the Midwest in the second week of December. And you and I both know that the temperatures aren't warm in the second week of December in the Midwest, or second week of November, in the Midwest.
Oh, no.
So we would go out at midnight and rerun the state meet cross country course. And you were allowed to have a hat, gloves, and shoes. And that was it.
3 miles?
3 miles. We called it the Frozen Tweeter Invitational. And it started off.
I'm dead.
Just the varsity squad. Yeah, looking back on it. But yeah, you had to you ran with flashlights through the state meet course, and it was just kind of this like bonding experience that we had, apparently. And
wow.
And then it got to be an actual invitational, and it ended up being, I was too early apparently. It got to be co-ed.
So now it's a thing.
Yeah, now it's this huge event, or not. Yeah, I don't know if it's clandestine. Yeah. But yeah, so that was the time that it was a birthday suit costume, but it was definitely an experience that I had for 2 seasons. And yeah, never gonna forget that one.
I am not either. So on that note,
wipe the middle picture.
Yeah, we love to live this way. Rad, Nathan Jr., friend of mine, I love you. Thanks for coming and taking us with you on your fitness journey. And if folks out there want to get some of your training, hit us up at evepacifichealth.com and we will pass you on to Nathan. Is there anything that you want to say before we go? Anything important you want to pass on to people as a fitness tip or motivational tip? Because we focus really on fitness, health, and weight loss.
Absolutely. So it's never too early or too late to start doing this. And when it comes to fitness, when it comes to racing, it's easy to get caught up in a lot of the hoopla and or the competition. But the one thing that I always remind people is that it is only between you and the pavement. And you can apply that unilaterally, regardless of whether or not you're in tennis, golf, volleyball, anything that you want. It's just between you and whatever you're doing. Whatever you focus on, take one more step.
Take it from the scientist. That's it. One more step. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate
love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for being here. My first guest, Nathan. And We will see you next time here.
You betcha.